But it starts with OPA, ends with OPA.
Yeah.
And everybody makes their changes in the middle.
Yeah.
And like yesterday, there was a whole section that they haven't even broken ground on yet, that they have to get input from command first. Because they don't know who's on first, who should be responding, what should be responding, how they should be responding, the supervisor level. They don't know how they want to frame that, so we can't even respond to it because they don't have a map for it. And the other thing that strikes me is that in terms of, and I'm not sure where to go with this because again it's another editorial comment on my part, is they don't have enough sergeants to respond to the need for supervision that they're supposed to do. And their comment to me was, well, we have the money, we have the slots, we just can't advertise. And to me that sort of means that they have to, outside of even policy, they've got to get their act together enough to fill those slots. Because then you're writing policy in the deficit. But I actually have notes from how it was reported to me from the academy and stuff. But in any event, they have sergeants in ratio to the amount they're supposed to supervise, right? But you don't. If you don't have, you're the whole other workforce. And we're writing for that. Are we writing for work? Are we writing policy because we don't have enough people to cover everything? Or writing policy
because it'll guide us
in our decision.
Hiring even
hiring, yeah.
Then the two other things that came up on our meeting, I wondered, our last POB meeting, I wondered what this committee feeling is. One is whether that Joanne talked about is whether we have a role or anything to do with not passing the bad priest on. The idea about the referrals to licensing board or whatever. Do we have any role in that when we're recommending someone be fired from APD and they resign to save themselves?
It's an unanswered question.
I know, but do we want to try to?
Is it a policy? Is it some area that we need to recommend a policy? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm asking. Is it something we attend to? Or
it would be, so here's the process. The State Law Enforcement Academy has a form, it's called a LE 90 maybe, and it's a form, you know, not unlike a citizen complaint form that gets sent to the board where the, you know, usually it's a department filling it out, but they may take citizen complaints, I don't know, but basically here's the reason we think that this officer should lose their certification as a law enforcement officer, and it goes to them and they decide to act on it or not. I'm not that familiar with their process. And so the question is, should the CPOA office or the POB be sending those in?
Yeah.
And it's an unanswered legal question, and we need Mark and Ed to develop a legal opinion, and then we can decide if we can.
Action item. And to check down what the LE 90 is.
Yeah. Because,
find out.
you know, it should be our internal policy. Either yes, we do them in every single case, or no, we never do them, but we need to make sure we're treating everybody the same.
Yep.
Every time we you know, my preference would be every time we recommend termination that we send it to the LAA board so they can see what's happening, right?
Would be my recommendation too.
I don't know if it's legal. I don't know if there's a precedent for such a thing. So,
good lawyer question.
yeah, good lawyer question.
Okay. The next lawyer question is on the policy of drugs, performance enhancement, alcohol. That this was not followed up on the officer-involved shooting with the lieutenant and the man who ultimately sued us, the narcotics cop on cop.
Lieutenant Brockle?
Brockle, thank you.
Brockle sued us?
Yeah, the Brockle shooting, I can't remember the victim.
Who's suing us?
Oh, that, it went through the court system. It's no one suing us.
Okay, I thought that's what you said.
No. But what is going to be our policy? Do we have any recommendations on who is tested, when, what levels, in the timing of the testing, and for the listed drugs?
Did you guys write a letter to the chief about that?
No, what
what happened, I asked that question during one of our POB meetings, why aren't they drug tested after an incident? The question was, city employees are drug tested, if they have an accident, first thing they do is send you down and get tested. Why aren't APD, anytime they have a officer involved shooting or accident,
Serious
traffic accidents,
any of those items? And I think, and this is just my personal opinion, is that's gonna have to be negotiated through the union and all this other stuff, the same as it would.
All right, I mean, the letter that the chief sent us said he was referring this to city legal / HR, and then we never heard back.
Yeah.
So what we may need to do is another letter saying, we're waiting to hear on this.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think it's a valid,
Just send a letter and not.
I know.
And the other thing that I'm missing is whether performance-enhancing drugs are on the IA list at all. Because a lot of them lead to
Like steroids.
aggression.
Mhm.
So you're talking steroids and
Absolutely.
those
Right, and those are on the hiring lists, so,
They should be on.
right, they test it when they hire the person, so they should be
Well,
testing.
Let's find that out too. I think it might be, I don't know what policy it is, but about alcohol, well, let's put it this way. I think when we draft the letter or make recommendations for policies, we need to have a specific time period in there as to when they have to show up at the lab. So things can't clear the system, et cetera, so just add that. if you could.
Say that one more time.
So, a specific time period as to when,
So you're saying they have to be tested within
Well,
3
X
hours of the
number-
shooting or
Yeah.
whatever?
I think if you follow the city policy.
Right, I mean, they already have a policy
Yeah.
for when they crash their car,
Right,
which.
They do?
or
Supposed to.
have an accident.
The problem is the
we have to look
other
at
city
that
employees get
policy.
sent and not the officers.
And I thought I had the number of the other policy here about crashing your car. And I don't have the number, but I don't think, when I looked at it, that the time was there. And I think,
Well, how would you do that if there's, yeah, you would have to have a time frame, half-life of any drug.
well, drugs, but alcohol would, expire faster.
That's what I'm saying.
And if it's just a preliminary investigation, I think that is enough of an investigation to trip the policy to have blood drawn, blood and urine samples, rather than waiting to the final investigation is completed.
Yeah.
No, of course.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You
So
wouldn't
it
like
needs-
have an accident with someone who you suspected of drunk driving and not test them on the scene.
No, like
Right.
Silver
Right.
City, like Silver City.
That seems obvious. Yeah, okay, I'll look into that for you.
Well, it
Thank
seems
you.
I
obvious,
voted
but,
for you.
Would you vote for me?
But they're not doing it.
they're not doing it, right? I mean, we had an officer off-duty,
That's so problem.
serious injury, killed somebody, and the rumor is, oh, he was drinking, but nobody bothered to test him. So it's not fair to say he was drinking if he's not tested, but it's not fair to the public to not test him and figure out if he's
Yeah,
drinking,
that's-
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the policy question is, why would internal affairs ever delay their
Investigation.
internal investigation? They're supposed to do parallel investigations, right?
Right.
So generally the question is, are you really not doing parallel investigations in every case?
For what reason?
And why, right? And so then the other, I think the body camera thing we're already looking at.
We're on top of that.
We're on top of that, so, in terms of this, maybe that's something that we put to address to the commander of internal affairs.
And with a letter to the chief and I would think Dr. Ginger too.
Well,
Why
isn't
they
that
aren't.
premature? I mean,
We can't,
No, because I think with that list that Ed's done of where everything's stuck, or,
I'm trying to-
all the cases that he's given us, which ones are still with the DA, which ones are with IA, which ones the time limits have run out on for recommendations. I think we have a role in asking some questions of what is timely.
No, I think we have a role, I'm just trying to figure out how to be incisive and
What do we do?
what's the piece that really needs to be addressed. The answer is I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, firing off a letter to the chief before we even understand what's going on isn't gonna be very helpful. And then we don't get an answer for another 45 days anyway, so.
But then there's
I-
45 more days as things are stuck.
Right, but I'd rather ask Ed to talk with the IA commander and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I think Ed understands it more than anyone and probably is the person to speak to that in terms of, I mean, it seems like a lot of them were stuck with the DA. Not necessarily even
Yeah,
IA,
there's
but just
quite a
like
few.
they were just stopped at the DA for a year or two.
It's
And that seems
extremely long
concerning.
time, yeah.
And that's not fair to the officer either, right? They got this hanging over their head for
No.
2 years, they don't know if they're being
It
charged.
isn't fair.
There's actually
Completely
13 at the DA's office.
How many at IA?
Uh, Six.
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 Well, could we make a recommendation then, as an action item, that Ed checks in at least the 6 at the IA and has a conversation with the commander there to get more information for us about this before our next meeting? So if necessary, we could come back with a policy committee recommendation that we then write a letter. How would that be?
That sounds good.
To
Actually, there's 7.
7, okay. There. And I know Ed has written to the DA about 2 cases, one of which we just finished off, and the other one, I haven't seen that she answered, did she? He sent 2 of them.
And she answered,
1,
she answered 1.
Mhm.
Actually, there's 3.
okay.
That he sent. Or he should have sent, and she's only answered 1.
Does the chief not respond to you guys when he responds?
Not ever. He responds to your office.
That seems, like, wouldn't it be nice if he CC'd you so you knew when your letter got responded to?
Wouldn't it though?
He just won't.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
Any feedback yet on the request for data? You haven't heard of it?
They don't know where their data is. So
Well,
I'm sure they got that and we're sort of saying, well, we don't.
That is not our problem.
They just had that stunned look.
No, that's not our problem. The settlement agreement is very clear that we're entitled to that data. So how they get it to us is not our problem.
Unless
Our
they're
problem
not
is,
collecting, yeah, that's
Getting it.
It's
Well,
our
if they're not
problem that we
collecting
can't use it, is what I meant, Beth.
yeah, I mean, if they're not collecting the data, then they're in violation of the
Correct.
settlement agreement.
Yeah.
So they need to figure it out.